who is, if you're confused by the background now, don't be suspicious. He's in the United States at the SABC's UN offices. Good evening to you, Sherwin. Do you agree with me that this is a coup not only for Trevor Noah but for South Africa? He will raise the profile of our country along with his own.
Well, I think essentially, let's talk a bit about the background. We're bringing a little bit of the United Nations to Comedy Central. I mean, a South African, this, as you mentioned, is very much a big deal. I'm not sure how big a coup it will be because we've seen foreigners before on The Daily Show making a name for themselves and then launching their own program. So this, in the foreign context, isn't a first. A first certainly for a South African, but we've seen the likes of John Oliver start his own show last week tonight, and that really is an offspring of The Daily Show. Stephen Colbert as well. I mean, you've seen people, unknowns, start their careers on The Daily Show and then take it into a different direction. So really a big deal. I think what we've seen from Trevor Noah over the last couple of years is him trying to introduce himself to a United States audience. He set up shop a couple of years ago in Los Angeles, did the comedy tour circuit, really trying to showcase himself here. And I think this must be a dream come true for him. He took a lot of risks. He invested a lot of his own money in making the move here. And this is paying off big time, Francis.
How successful was he, Sherwin? Because I'm sure there are a lot of Americans still scratching their heads today thinking, who is this Trevor Noah?
Well, I think they are scratching their heads, and you see that even from the press today, trying to sort of explain the little bit they do know about him, where he comes from, what he's done in his short time, the 3 appearances as a contributor on The Daily Show. So a lot of people, I mean, I was watching the morning television shows here, and they were like, I've never heard of this guy before, while I was jumping up and down in my living room. I mean, it's really going to be an interesting period. He'll obviously come to the United States, and before he actually takes over the reins and introduce himself more, he'll probably do a lot of television shows, a lot of interviews, maybe even 60 Minutes, and really they're going to take a very close look. It's almost like running for the presidency in the United States. The American media can be very, very harsh. They will be vetting him, they will want to know more about him, and then hopefully he will stand up to measure.
Tell us a bit more. How much media coverage is he getting following this announcement, which some say was a shock announcement?
Well, early days still, Francis. I mean, he's not in the country right now. He's on a comedy tour in Dubai, so people can't really put him in the hot seat and grill him as to what he will bring to the show. But you've seen, the New York Times broke the story. It went crazy on Twitter. The BBC is reporting about it. It is a global story in many ways, simply because Jon Stewart is such a global phenomenon. I mean, he focuses mainly on the American political dynamics here, and yet has found an audience globally, and that's going to be one of the big challenges for Trevor Noah. His audience will essentially be an American one, not a South African one, and that means all your material essentially has to change, and he will have to do a lot of educating in terms of the political dynamics in Washington, the difficulties that Jon Stewart, in such a very erudite and a very accomplished way, has been able to tap into. Trevor Noah is going to have to understand the American landscape if he's going to be successful. Certainly as successful as he's been understanding the South African one in his performances.
And apparently it's quite an educated audience, somewhat niche, that really follows The Daily Show. Just tell us how big it is in the United States.
It's not the biggest show on television, but it has a very loyal audience. It's a late night show. They broadcast from Mondays to Thursdays at 11 p.m. There's a repeat at 1 in the morning. But I think, as we move away from television to the online medium, you see a lot of the Daily Show clips being shared on Twitter and shared online and on Facebook. So I think that's also where the audience is moving to. It's not the biggest show in the world, but it has a very, very dedicated audience base. Liberal leaning, pro-abortion, pro-gay rights, and an antithesis basically to the conservative narrative you have from Fox News, the very conservative Republican-leaning narrative, and that is, they're very combative. They take each other on, and I think we're going to see more of that in the future.
Like you say, we'll have to see how he's received among Americans, but it's basically guaranteed, isn't it, that he will be interviewing the likes of American presidents, say?
Well, President Obama was the first sitting president to appear on The Daily Show soon after he assumed the White House in 2008. We've subsequently seen former presidents, the likes of President Carter, Clinton, appear on the show. So expect maybe we'll see Hillary Clinton in the future being interviewed by Trevor Noah. But that's all in the cards, and we can only try and read them, but perhaps not as accurately as we hope.
Thank you so much, SABC's US correspondent Sherwin Bryce. Peace and no pressure, Trevor. Noah, the whole of South Africa, the whole of the world will be watching to see how you perform, but we trust you'll do amazingly well. Let's look at news from South Africa now. ANC